Munchausen's Proxy, where we finished the first season of Twisted Metal with more hope going forward than we started. As I have mentioned every time I talk about this series, and my love for the early Sony Playstation installments of the video game franchise, it is not the Twisted Metal show I would have wrote. No, my Twisted Metal would have been a sci-fi dark fantasy that would have played up Calypso's dark side as shown in the video games, rather than make a semi-joke out of him as they did in the last half of this season. What we got was a comedy with some action mixed in, and that is fine. I already mentioned that the show got better as it progressed to the halfway mark in my last review of the Peacock series. Now that I have finished, has my opinion changed? Let's get into this mostly spoiler-free review of the totality of the first season of Twisted Metal. There might be a couple of spoilers, but I will try to keep them to a minimum. Let me get into the complaints first once more. First, Thomas Hayden Church's Agent Stone got lamer the more the season went on, which is a shame, because he was a pretty decent character when you ignore the flashbacks that show what he was before he took it upon himself to resurrect law and order in the world, or at least the continental United States. I was less than thrilled with his speechifying before the climax of the season, since the analogy he was using was very weak, and the speech itself rather self-serving. It really did Thomas Hayden Church and Agent Stone a very big disservice. The second issue I had with the second half of the season was it kind of dragged ass in episodes 6 and 7. The flashbacks of John Doe and how he wound up with his car, Evelyn, dragged a bit too. Even if they were interesting, decently written, and well acted by the kid playing the younger John. And there were a lot of them for 5 half-hour episodes. That meant less time on what was going on in the present. The third thing I want to mention is a serious lack of Sweet Tooth doing Sweet Tooth things on camera. He hits the dam complex and most of the carnage takes place off camera. He hits 2 other strongholds of Agent Stone's and they are completely off camera. They go to the loony bin where he was incarcerated before the end of the world, and all we really get is a lame flashback of him losing his on the set of a sitcom, and then him speechifying to the corpses of his mother and stepfather. Then we don't really see him and Stu until the big climax of the season. As I mentioned in my first half review, John Doe is the linchpin of the series, given that he is the main character everything is seen through. But Sweet Tooth should be the driver of its events. And he is. Sort of. His carnage is partially what has Agent Stone amped up near the end. But it is mostly all off-screen stuff when we should be shown what is going on, not told. It was disappointing. The last complaint is less a complaint and more irritation at how the end of the 9th episode and the first half of the 10th episode went. The writing was a little weak, especially the 10th. Someone who lives in a post-apocalyptic world as a delivery man who can count on being attacked often should have noticed things a lot sooner than he did. Actually, John never really noticed them. He simply walked to where he was herded like a fat and happy lamb. John was like that the entire season, but it really showed near the end. Naivete would get you killed in the world Twisted Metal presents. A hard world produces hard men who simply do not survive unless they are hardened to the realities present in said world. Like the first half of Season 1, there is not much to complain about if you take the series as it is, not as I would have it. The good things from the first half of the season mostly continue, With the aforementioned decline of Stone's character and the lack of Sweet Tooth aside, Anthony Mackie is still pretty good throughout the season. He was a consistent level of competence with a slightly unbelievable touch of that naivete I mentioned earlier. He handles the comedy written into the story well, without making it trip over into that way too much territory that Marvel and other studios just can't seem to help themselves straying into these days. The action scenes are still good, even if you could wish for a few more of them, especially more of what we got in episode 9. Quiet also continued to improve. Stephanie Beatrice and Anthony Mackie have extremely good chemistry together, and they are both better when playing off of each other than when paired with someone else, or by themselves. Of the secondary and tertiary characters, Miranda Watts, the leader of the truck caravan, is noticeable as being exceptional in what little we see of her. Given how the season ended, I imagine we will see more of her if Peacock decides to renew the series for a second season. Jason Mantzoukas stood out in episode 8 as the preacher, a coke-snorting nutcase who is the leader of a group of cultists. His appearance in this season should set up an interesting return for him should season 2 be greenlit. One character I was disappointed in not getting to see more of, especially his vehicle, was Mr. Slam. We get a brief, somewhat disgustingly funny appearance by him in episode 7 where he is interrupted performing a rather odd show. If you've seen it, you know it. If you haven't seen it, well, all I can guess is that the writers might be spending too much time in the wrong parts of Tijuana. The climax of the season in the 9th episode was what I was hoping there would be more of. The way the season ended, it seemed to be a setup season, holding back on the sort of things we saw in that episode until the second season. There is a teaser of what could be coming in the last episode. If they do it right, it could be fucking awesome. If they don't stick the landing, it could be lame. Hopefully they incorporate more of the game format from Twisted Metal 1 and 2 into what is coming. If they do, it could manage to hit epic. Unlike The Last of Us, where we know incorporating more of the game is going to suck, there was never any suckage in the first 2 Twisted Metal games. Some of the latter installments of the franchise did have issues, but 1 and 2 were solid. With writers willing to lean hard on what the game gives them to work with, Season 2 has serious upward potential, especially if they cast Calypso as well as they have nearly everyone else, and then use them in a proper manner fitting with the game. We get to see the outline of where this show could go at the end of episode 10. There are glimpses of characters from the games, some of whom we meet in this season. It is just up to the writers and the showrunner to execute what should be easy. Easy, however, is pretty hard for Hollywood these days, and any hope of a second season for Twisted Metal might very well end up being decided by both the writers and actors strike, as well as how long NBC Universal decide to keep Peacock up and running. Twisted Metal has become the biggest comedy hit for that platform. Deadline reports that the show has become the streamer's most binged comedy debut to date, making a renewal likely, barring the previously mentioned caveats. This is particularly impressive given the episodes are only 30 minutes long, decreasing the viewing minutes it racks up. So I am hopeful. I was in for at least this season, given my love of the first 2 games. The performances and writing in this season have me willing to sign up for a second season. Sadly, with the strikes going on, that likely won't happen for at least a year, more probably 2. So I will end this here. If you like what I do here, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and leave a comment or constructive criticism below. Also, Make sure the bell icon is clicked so you are notified of new videos. The next video will probably be a review of Heart of Stone, the new Gal Gadot spy thriller Netflix has incoming. Until then, tschüss.